and Spain and Portugal, but they haven't risen yet in the United States. It's only a matter of time. Right? Just like the housing bubble couldn't inflate forever, the NASDAQ bubble couldn't inflate forever, what we've got now is a government bubble, and it can't inflate forever. Eventually, and not way in the future, but during the term of the next president, hopefully it'll be earlier in the term, because the sooner it happens, the better, but this bubble is going to burst. And as I mentioned earlier, what I'm afraid of, if it bursts too late, that we're going to blame it on Romney. And when you blame, if Romney is the president, and of course, then they'll blame it on capitalism, just like when Bush was the president. Of course, the problem with Bush is that he abandoned capitalism the minute he took his oath of office. He didn't wait until the 2007 crisis, but government came in and they screwed up the economy, they distorted investments, they inflated these bubbles, and then when the bubble burst, everybody wants to blame it on capitalism and say we just need more regulations. And unfortunately, Romney is going to be the face of capitalism, whether he practices it or not. And so if the next crash comes later in his term, Obama might be able to say, I told you so. And so we might, elect somebody even worse than Obama, if you can imagine that. But if it happens early enough in a Romney administration, then it's easier to blame it on Obama, and it will be easier to try to actually do something different, to actually try the concepts and the ideas that Ron Paul has been advocating like a voice in the wilderness for over 30 years in the U.S. Congress. One of the things that we can credit Ron Paul for, whether they want to admit it or not, is they actually are going to consider in the Republican platform, they have a provision about a new commission to consider going back on the gold standard. And, a lot of people, you hear the conventional media talk about it. You think that they're considering, reinstituting slavery or something. People think that the gold standard is some arcane idea whose time has passed, and, we're too smart for that. We have a modern economy. We don't want to go back to this barbaric relic. Well, the founding fathers, when we went on a gold standard, that was progress. It's not like paper money is a new invention that we came up with it. Paper money's been around for a long time. And the founding fathers were very familiar with it. They knew what a disaster it was. They lived through that disaster with the Continental. And so they were forward-thinking. It was progress to adopt the gold standard. When they wrote the Constitution, they put us on a gold standard. And by the way, they've never amended it, so gold and silver are still legal tender, not paper. And we became the world's wealthiest creditor nation under a gold standard. It's only since we left the gold standard that we're broke. We're now the world's biggest debtor. So the people in the media that say, hey, the Republicans are crazy for thinking about going back on the gold standard, the crazy thing was that we left it in the first place. And if you remember, Richard Nixon said he was temporarily taking us off the gold standard. It's been 40 years. It's long enough. 43 years or something like that. So there is some hope. And hopefully what we can do, if we can understand the government's responsibility for this predicament, and we've got the right people in the White House and the right people who are advising him, then maybe we have an opportunity to go back to those founding principles of individual liberty, limited government, private property, free enterprise, sound money, all the things that we abandoned, right? And the reason we abandoned them is because we had enough wealth. We accumulated massive amounts of wealth because we were free. And now we're broke, and the only way we're ever going to get out of this gigantic hole is to re-embrace those same principles, because it is impossible to recover without it. Right now, we've got a phony recovery. It's all based on this artificial stimulus. We're spending more money and digging ourselves into a deeper hole. That's why there's no jobs. The jobs are never going to come, right? Because the economy can't recover because the government won't let it. The only way we can have a real recovery is to have a real recession. And a real recession, unfortunately, is what we need to fix the mess. We've got to let resources be reallocated, land, labor, and capital. They're all where they're not supposed to be because government has basically micromanaged the economy through monetary and fiscal policy, and it's a complete disaster. And the only reason we're still keeping it together is because the dollar is still the reserve currency, and the rest of the world is willing to lend us the money and supply us with the goods that we're incapable of producing ourselves. But when the dollar collapses and when we have our currency, our sovereign debt crisis, that global gravy train is coming to an end. And the only hope we have of ever regaining our lost prosperity is this movement winning over the hearts and minds of the American people and Congress, and getting people to understand, getting the voters to understand exactly what the lies that they've been told over the years, and getting people to understand what the truth is, and get all beyond all the politics and all the name calling, and actually understand how grave this crisis is and what needs to be done, because there is no government program. I testified before Congress not too long ago about, even the Republicans kept asking me, okay, but what's your solution? What should we do? They weren't hearing me. My solution was